And we are live. Hello, welcome everyone to another Reedsy Live. Reedsy's ongoing series of webinars where we bring on professionals from the world of publishing to show you how to write and publish better books. My name is Martin. I'm from the Reedsy team here in London, and I'm so glad you could join us today for the long-awaited return of one of our favorite recurring segments. That is our cover critiques, where we invite one of the many fantastic professional designers on Reedsy to have a look at some book covers submitted by you, the viewers, the authors, the writers, and he'll be providing his honest feedback and giving suggestions for how one might improve or if it can be improved at all. Thank you for all joining us. I see there's so many of you already on here. So yeah, while we're waiting, do let me know where you're coming from, city and country. We have Jen from Australia, fantastic. Zita from Pembroke Pines, Florida. See Nick from Belgium, Agnes from Sardinia, Italy, fantastic. Verona from Cambodia, nice and early for you, Verona. Well, thank you. Really appreciate you joining us. We've got someone from down south, Alabama in the house. Not here to make you comfortable is their online handle. I'm feeling all right now. We have Michaela from the Czech Republic, fantastic. Ramona from St. Petersburg, Florida. Great to see so many folks from all around the world. If this is your first time with Reedsy, watching one of our events, Reedsy is an online marketplace, a platform where writers and authors can connect with professionals who can help them edit their books, design their books, market them. We even do book coaching now. It's a new feature we have. But today we're going to be focusing on book cover design, which is an aspect of publishing that I absolutely love. It's lovely and visual. It's also somewhere where there's a great amount of diversity and an opportunity where a lot of self-publishing authors can give their product that professional sheen. And today our guest, Jake Clark, is going to show you what it takes to put together a professional book cover. We have Melissa waving, glad to see you. Roslyn is from a garden in East Texas. Nemo in BC, Canada. Lauren from Toronto, I presume also Canada. Great to see so many folks from everywhere. We're just going to give this a few minutes for everyone to roll in. How this is going to work today. Earlier in the week and also last week, I asked folks to send in their front cover for their books. It could be one that they've designed themselves. It could be one that they've had professionally made, either by someone at Reedsy or someone not at Reedsy. It could be something that a talented nephew or uncle has made, or niece or aunt. But yeah, whatever you have, if you have a cover and you want a bit of feedback on it, we're going to do that for you today. Now, already, even before this thing started, we've got 31 likes and someone just gave us a thumbs down. So, first of all, poor form. And if everyone else can help me out and undo that thumbs down by giving us a like, that would mean a lot to us. It would just mean that we can get this broadcast out to more people, help more folks, and impress my bosses with our video metrics here. Also, if you like, you can subscribe to the Reedsy channel. Each week we have new content, either from us doing live events or from Shaylin, a writer who works with the team. She does a lot of great stuff, talking about writing craft topics as well as publishing topics. Jan Lloyd from Wales, a very, very standard Welsh name. It could be anyone. We have Emily from Sacramento, California. Bragati from Auckland, New Zealand, checking in. Thank you. Okay, I now see that it is 8 p.m. where I am here in London, which means it's 3 p.m. on the East Coast, 12 on the West Coast. It's probably about 3 o'clock in Hong Kong and Singapore and China, maybe about 5:30 or 6:30 in Sydney and Auckland. Let's get this thing started. Please help me welcome my guest, who has been a long-time book cover designer here on Reedsy. He has been here almost since the very beginning. He is a cover designer who makes badass covers of badass authors. One true badass. Please welcome Jake Clark. Jake, how you doing?
How's it going, guys? Glad to be here.
Well, really, really happy to see you again. We started these book cover critiques, I think, in 2017. I think you are our very first guest on that one. But things have changed. You now have a tremendous beard, I see.
Yeah, I've been working on it for a couple of years.
Yeah. So where are you based in America?
I'm out of South Carolina, so if you hear the southern drawl, that's where that's coming from.
It's classic. You born and raised there then?
Yeah, I'm born and raised right where I'm at. I bought my parents' house. They moved out, and I stayed.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I guess that's the great thing about working as a publishing freelancer. You can do it kind of from wherever you want these days.
Yeah, it's really good. It's been a really good job. It's been real. I've been real blessed with good clients and good work, and yeah, the flexibility to be at home and work has been tremendous. So.
Wonderful. Well, we'll start in just a minute. One of the things that Jake is going to show you is a few examples of the work he's done. But recently, Jake has kindly helped us out on a project where we redesigned the front covers of seven self-published books. And yeah, we tested the new covers against the old covers to see how well the new versions did. And Jake's actually was the big winner of the lot. Almost every single cover had new cover that was designed by one of our professionals had more clicks and interest per cover, but yours went up 164%. That's 2.5 times as much interest. So this is the kind of quality we're looking at today. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I was really happy to be a part of that, be a part of that experience and stuff. And I was really excited to see the results and to see how the covers performed.
But yeah, the link to that post is in the video description. So take a look at that after the webinar, of course. So I'm going to let you take over. We've started up a slideshow. I'll be here in voice only, so if you need anything, just let me know. But yeah, here we are.
All right, well, guys, I'll just kick it off with who I am and I guess kind of some of my credentials. I'm born and raised in South Carolina. I have a degree in graphic design with a minor or actually, I have a degree in bachelor's arts with a minor or a focus in graphic design. And so I've been doing book cover work now for 9 years, and I've been doing it for about 7 years full time. I left the job that I was at many years ago and decided to try and do the book cover thing on my own to see if it could support my family. It was a passion of mine. I've always loved reading, and I've always loved book cover art. And so, if you guys are familiar with Raymond Swanlin, who was a fantasy book cover artist, he's just a fantasy artist in general, but I saw one of his covers a long time ago, and I kind of thought I would love to do that. And then fast forward about 4 years or so, and I started doing it and ended up being quite successful at it. And I've been doing fantasy and sci-fi and urban fantasy mostly ever since then. I've dabbled in a couple other genres, but those are my definite three mainstays in my portfolio. You can see here there's a sci-fi one, there's the urban fantasy, the War for the Vampire Throne. Here we got a superhero one I've done a while back that remains one of my favorite covers. And then you have the Island, which is the cover that I did for the Reedsy article of which one, how would a professional cover perform versus an author-driven cover. So it's been a real good job. I've really enjoyed meeting people and being able to work on some really cool and awesome projects and bringing authors' ideas and concepts to visual life. So.
All right, great. So let's get this thing started. Just so folks at home know, we had about 400 to 500 submissions. I looked through all of them. If yours doesn't get picked, we're sorry, but we should have a good range of designs on display. So there's plenty to learn here. If you got picked, it doesn't mean we think it's bad. If you didn't get picked, it doesn't mean we hated it or loved it. But there's just a learning opportunity for all of us here. All right, you ready to start with the first one, Jake?
Yeah, let's get the roll.
All right, I thought I'd pick one that was sort of in your wheelhouse. This is a science fiction novel called Paradise Calls.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that I picked out of the lot as well that I thought had some really good things going for it, but also some things that were kind of going against it. The reason I picked the covers that we're going to go through is I wanted to pull out some lessons that I've learned as a cover artist and things that I picked up along the way in terms of how to make a cover really be impactful and connect with your reader base and the market that you're aiming for. Paradise Calls here by Viner is a pretty solid cover overall, but for me, it kind of looked like a cover that you would just see among the rest of the covers. It was kind of lacking a unique hook or a real, I guess, a real pull to the image. I think the image is fine. If I'm being real nitpicky, I would say the silhouette would probably need to be fleshed out and see a little bit of detail there. But overall, the concept of the cover kind of falls right into what you see a lot of other sci-fi covers like this look. And it kind of turns into a brown cow. And I hate that. That's not to be a negative or a knock, but there's a book that's called Purple Cow by Seth Godin. And in that book, he talks about how you need to separate yourself um, from your competitors. So if you're driving down the road and you see a herd full of cows, most of them are going to be brown, white, black, something like that. If you've got a purple cow, you're going to remember the purple cow. And so, as a cover artist, what I try to do with my clients and my concepts is create a cover that is a purple cow that causes readers to stop and look, but still fits in the cat, still looks like a cow, if that makes sense. You're trying to market it to a specific reader base that expect to see certain things and expect to see certain looks. And so you need to play into that, but you also need to separate yourself out from the rest of your competition so that you can get clicks and you can get sales and you can get eyes on your synopsis and you can get people to your story. And so with Paradise Calls, I did feel like it kind of missed that mark a bit. It blended in a bit too much with the current trends of the genre. And so it needs a little bit more to separate itself out. As far as what it could be, I mean, it could be a rework of the typography. If someone went in there and did a real solid typography job that helped brand the title and brand the look of the image, that's one way to go about it. Could also look into just replacing the silhouette to something that's a little bit more dynamic instead of the typical lone guy looking over the city, kind of Batman-esque. It could be something different there that would catch the eye or be more memorable to stand out from everybody else in that genre.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll, I guess, revisit a lot of these principles a little bit later on. But thank you for sending that one in, James. Let's have a look at the next one, which is a middle grade novel called Elementals, The Resurrected. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, yeah, I thought this one, I liked some of the elements in this one. I did think it needed to have some overall refinement to the piece and to the cover in general. The biggest thing I would suggest here, if you're not going to touch your imagery, would be to do your typography and make it a bit more, make it bolder, stronger, and more impactful. It's kind of got a flat. The whole cover reads a bit flat at this point. There's some dark tones with the characters and stuff, but the overall color palette is very neutral, and there's not a lot of contrasting push and pull colors, and so you could easily take your typography in that direction and make a strong contrasting typography to help one, draw the eye when it's in amongst all the other thumbnailed covers, and also to separate yourself out from everybody else. Again, going back to kind of how you can stand out among the crowd. But I thought the typography needed to be readdressed here, and also some more contrasting colors in the artwork itself. And the one thing that kind of does bug me overall is the light and dark fuzzy colors that are through the background there. I think that could probably be smoothed out, and instead of being just kind of this amalgamous colors, it could be a bit more cohesive across the board. I'm pretty sure they're going for a light and dark approach there. The character on the left is more dark, and probably the I don't know if it'd be the antagonist, but more maybe just more the darker protagonist. And then you got the heroine on the right side there with the jewels and the magic. But there's a kind of a hard line between the two, and I think that could be blended out a bit better to be more cohesive.
Like, yeah, that feels like there's quite a lot of negative space going on here. Like, I guess it does sort of jar a bit compared to what you see in most covers.
It does. I mean, one of the things that's going to be a continual thing that pops up is just refinement. The cover needs a little bit more refinement to get to the next level and to be a little bit more stronger.
Cool. All right. Thank you for sending that one in, Ni Phoenix. The next one we have in is The Looney Bin by Stan Kapuscinski. It's a real piece of fiction. What was the first impression you had here?
For this one, I liked the concept, and that's another thing that's gonna come up on through a lot of these covers. Is the concept is there, the pieces or the elements or the idea behind the cover, I think is really strong and is there. I think it just needs to be refined a couple levels deeper to really get to a real strong, impactful cover. They went with the red and black and white color palette there. The white stands out. I mean, it reads. The Looney Bin reads really, really, really well against that red background. However, you lose your characters, and you end up with kind of this flat look to the cover. And I think that's probably going to end up hurting sales because people are going to, at a thumbnail view, those silhouettes are going to blend in and essentially just disappear at thumbnail. And that's going to be another thing that you have to realize is when people look at your covers, one, they typically do see it at thumbnail. And so you need to be aware of that. Two, you need to look at it, think about how you look at Netflix or how you look at Hulu or whatever streaming service you have, how quickly you look at those small images and you process that within about 0.2 seconds. I read an article probably, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, and Netflix said the average eye time on a thumbnail before somebody looks at, either clicks in and goes and sees what the show's about or moves to the next one, was about 0.2 seconds. So, I mean, it's an instant judgment call on whether I want to know more about this or not. And if the reader's eye can't process the image fast enough, they're going to just go on to the next one. Unless they've been directly sent to that cover. But if they're just looking through the lot and scrolling Amazon or wherever for that cover for a story, they're going to look at that and skip right over it. And I think here that's what's probably going to happen. People are going to just kind of breeze right through the cover because they're not really going to catch and hook onto the imagery. And that could be easily fixed. I mean, if you just took, if you didn't want to put much effort into it, you could keep the bin and have just one silhouette that's fallen into the bin. That would be one real quick way to get a nice silhouette and to kind of simplify and amplify the cover and the idea behind the concept here that he's going for. Again, if I'm going to get real nitpicky, I would say the typography. It's really nice when you use a font that might fit the funny, loony side or if it's the comical side of a story, but you have to be very careful because sometimes those fonts, if they're not used properly, can come across kind of I don't say. I guess the word I would use here in my town would be hokey. It comes off a little bit, just not quite, more parody than the fun spirit or the spirit of the story is wanting to convey. And so when you get into choosing fonts and that kind of stuff, that can really play a factor in how people interpret and process a cover. So, like I said, the elements here are there. I just think this cover needs a few more layers of refinement and revision to really get it a lot stronger and a lot more competitive in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I don't know anyone who's ever found a funny font funny. Like, it's the reason why Comic Sans and nobody likes, because it's supposed to be fun and light and jovial, but like, nah, just like it's trying too hard in a way.
Exactly. That's something that happens, and people, that's the way people perceive that stuff, and you have to be aware of that when you're designing a cover and picking and making font choices.
Cheetan has suggested the L in Looney could be flipped, which I it's like the Toys R Us one. I think that might be a bit on the hokey side as well.
You'd have to be real careful because I guarantee you, the first times they do that, someone's going to say, "Oh, it's the Junie bin." They're going to look at it like a J versus an L. And I think you could flip the E. You could play with that depending on the font you choose. You could go with a more sophisticated sans serif font and flip the E so that it's clearly an E, not could be misinterpreted as another letter. But you have to be careful. But I mean, there's all kind of little ways and nuances you can go in there and tweak a cover to convey and ratchet up the impact your cover has with it. So it's not a bad idea. I just wouldn't do the L.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Thanks for sending that one in, Stan. The next one we have here is nonfiction. Humorous nonfiction by Hoot Brooks. Mostly true stories I told in bars, a collection of stories from American history that are most neutral or amusing.
Yeah, I chose this one because I thought this was a good lesson in understanding that when you're creating a cover and even having one, if you're doing it yourself or if you're having a designer do it for you, understand that the title is part of the image. The words that you're using, the text is part of the image. It's not a separate entity. And so those two things need to marry each other. And we're going to talk about this later on, but the font choices you choose to go with and segue, which we've already spoken about that with the Looney Bin, but there's how they go hand in hand, but also in terms of how your typography integrates with your image. I like this image. I think it's very simple. It's very clean. The beer, you have the nice shades of amber there with the bubbles above. I think that's really nice. Where I think this one kind of lacks is the typography just seems laid on there. And I think sometimes we see covers done professionally, and it looks like the type is just kind of laid on the cover, and we go, oh, it's simple and easy. But a lot of times there's a thought process behind why it looks so simple. And a lot of times when you start going simple and minimal, the choices you make are actually much more impactful and much more they have a lot more weight to them. And so you have to be aware of that. Like with me, when I do a very chaotic and actiony and crazy cover, I can hide things, I can get away with things, I can mask things and get away with things that people aren't going to pick up on. But when you really just have almost a blank canvas, which you don't have that here, but you're pretty darn close to a very simple canvas that you're working with, you can't get away with a lot. And the typography here, I'm not against the font choice that's been used, but I think it could be interplayed with the image a whole lot stronger. It could be a little bolder. The font could be bolder. You could play with how the different sizes of the words in the story. You could go mostly real big, true real small stories. You could play with the weights and the sizes of the font. You could bring in some texture. That bubble texture in the beer there is really fantastic, and you can see how that might play if it's overlaid in a really unique way inside that black. You could also play with some different shades, like a dark gold or a real dark color in terms of your font there. I don't mind the black. I think the black is probably going to read real well at thumbnail. So if you went with any other colors, I would keep them very, very dark. But I think you could punch up that the way the font or the way the title is written going down a bit more to have a bit more impact and to again kind of convey the spirit of your story and the essence of the story itself. And the one other thing is he's got the Hoot Brooks and then History Science down there. He's got everything's out of alignment. You could either have it all left aligned, then a nice pretty line, or you could have Hoot and History. They're lined up a certain way, and the title is lined up in a different way. But the fact that there's three different alignments there, as a graphic designer, that bugs me a good bit. So
Yeah, I think some folks in the comments were having a minor seizure over the alignment as well. It's close, but we're not
yeah,
quite there on that. Uh, cool. Well, Brooks, thank you for sending that one in. I hope that's your real name because it's a good one. Let's come back to science fiction. It's a title that requires me thinking about it before I say it. Sicario Notes by Anthony Acosta.
yeah. This one, I laughed when I saw this one. Not laughed in a bad way. I don't want to say that, but like the moment I saw it, I thought I love this idea. I don't know what the story is about, but I really want to say that I think the title for me, I read it immediately and kind of knew what it was. It looks like I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen the Sicario duology movies right now that are out, but it reminded me of those immediately. That might be why it connected with me because I really like those movies. But I really thought the title was great. And that's one thing that you need to understand when you're doing your titles is those things can be that's part of your branding. And Sicario Knots, while I will admit, is a bit of a mouthful. And it's not going to be something that's necessarily gotten immediately all the time when people read that title. But once they hear that, they're going to remember that. And it's going to be a word and a phrase and a title that sticks with them. And so when you are creating your titles and you're creating your stories, think about that in terms of that being part of your branding for just that one book, or if you're doing an entire series, think about how that branding can play and elevate you. I get some titles sometimes from some authors, and it's like the Dragon in the Castle, and I just think, you know, well, what are we doing here? This title could be any other title on the face of the earth. It's not memorable. It's not catchy. Actually, I've titled probably 100 or so authors' books myself because they wouldn't have the title ready for me at the time I did the cover, and I would just toss something out there, and I would toss something out that would be unique and different, and they would just they would run with it. So it's really interesting to see my titles out in the world. But think about that when you're laying out your story and developing how your story is going to be presented to your reader base and to the readers and to readers at large, and think about how they're going to interpret that and remember that. Going on to this cover explicitly though, I think the pieces are kind of there. I just think if I could say one thing, it would be refinement. I like the skull in the astronaut helmet. I like the cigar in the mouth. I think that's really cool. The gold chains I think are pretty neat. I think there's a lot of neat aspects to this cover. I just think they need to be again ratcheted up 4 or 5 levels of refinement to really begin to be impactful. You could essentially take just that image of the astronaut helmet and the glasses and the cigar and the skull and have that as your focal point, and that alone would be a super interesting graphic that if someone's scrolling through Amazon and they see Sicario knots and they see this image of a skull smoking a cigar with the aviator glasses on, I would click on that and go, what is this about? Because I'm a sci-fi guy and I would immediately know this is somehow sci-fi based. What's going on here? Let me dive a little deeper. And just like that, you've created a hook image that people are going to connect with and want to know more about.
Cool. We've had a comment about the sort of shout line at the bottom. As a copywriter, uh, if you do want to keep it as such, there's some chat in the comments about whether they like it or not. But I would put this in sentence case, and I think the styling is probably saving the world question mark new sentence yes comma really exclamation point. I think it's a question and answer thing, so you may want to refine that as well.
Yes,
Cool.
yes, definitely.
All right. Oh, one question. Like with this one, they've chosen to go for Sicario Noughts in that title case, so big S, small Icario Noughts. Is there generally an approach that you prefer to go all caps, or does it sort of just depend on each project?
It depends on the project, and I would 95% of the time default to all caps. So yeah, that would definitely be part of the refinement process. Is we're going to change the way the font is on this. A condensed sans serif would serve you really well here because it's such a long word, and you would be able to make it larger, and it would have more impact on the cover itself. So I mean, yeah, there's a myriad of little roads I can take here with this cover to that you could pick at. But like I said, the pieces are there. They just need to be juiced up a good bit.
Susan saying maybe refine is a nice way of saying change. I think what Jake is sort of saying is like all the examples here are good concepts that just need that elevation. Uh, all right. Ooh, I need to find a way to get rid of this little comment now. Whoop. Uh, wait. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Thank you, Anthony, for sending that one in. Our next one is a cozy mystery called The Mermaid Pool, a lucky librarian mystery. All right, what do you make of this one?
I would say this one is one where one of the things you can do that will serve you well as you develop your concept for your cover is to go to the genre itself, look at the top 100, look at the top 200 or whatever you want to look at. You can very easily say cozy mysteries Amazon, and the first thing you're going to get linked is the top 100 on Amazon, and see what's popular, see what's working. And you have to understand that there's going to be outliers in there. There's going to be authors who are just well known. It wouldn't matter what cover they had. They're going to have 1,000 reviews and they're going to be at the top. But I mean, look at trends. Look at the way things. Look at what is uh, uh, what style of artwork you see more so than not, and pick up on those things. And I think the mermaid pool here it's beginning to read cozy, but it's also lacking a little bit of what I've seen with cozy mysteries and cozies in general, because it's going with the flat vector art approach, which is something that cozy mysteries do or cozies do, but it's not quite fully realized here in this piece. The strong line down the middle between the two colors, that kind of is more jarring and creates a weird separation in the middle of the cover. I think if you just had blue back there, that would automatically be a step in the right direction. If you like if you wanted to bring in the other color, you could put it in the title or however you want to do it. Again, the typography here is lost a bit. It's a bit thin. You could look at a stronger, bolder font. I don't know what font that is off the top of my head. I usually can recognize fonts pretty well, but they went with the glyphs of the font, so that R has that real long tail, but it creates a weird spacing in the title, and so you need to be aware of that. There's some weird um, variances in why the A is real small, why the O's in pool are small. So again, the typography needs to be changed out to something bolder and something stronger. I like the spirit of the typography. I like the fact that R has that tail, but it gets lost here and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so you could easily go for a new font. The image itself, the girl is she is swimming in some kind of pool, and it kind of looks like she's swimming in a pool of soup on the one and swimming into a blue pool on the other side. So again, that color is the biggest jarring thing that I would immediately just 86 and pick a nice flat color. And it says the mermaid. I really expect to see a mermaid tail somewhere on the cover. It seems like that would be there, and so maybe that's just my own expectations being misled there. But that's one of the things you need to take into consideration. If your title is that, look at it from a consumer standpoint and how somebody who doesn't know your story, doesn't know anything about your book, how they'll interpret your title when they hear it, and that can play into how you approach your cover, how you lay it out. So yeah, that's where I've got there.
Yeah, I think some people are mentioning there. It's like, oh yeah, maybe if she's a mermaid, she's got long hair. I don't think there is a mermaid in here at all. I think it's and the blurb that we got sent doesn't mention the mermaid or the mermaid pool. So it could be one of those ones where your cover and your title is setting up a certain promise, and if nobody can sort of figure out how it relates, then I don't know. Either people who like mermaid stuff won't be very happy, or people who hate mermaid stuff will be put off this entirely. Um, it's an interesting one here because I see there's like three different fonts being used here. The title, the
Yeah.
author name, and then there's a sort of blocky sans serif one for A Lucky Librarian Mystery. Is I guess do you have sort of like a hard and fast rule for how many fonts you really should be using on any given page?
Two. That's
Like
it.
two's
Two at
plenty.
most.
Yeah,
Two. Two's plenty. Yeah. One of the things I do a lot of times, the way I do it is I'll have the title font as a certain font, a certain look, and then if I have a series, the series font will be a little bit different, and then the series font will match the author font. That's usually the way I tie it all together. Very rarely do I. I mean, you can break it. There's no any rule can be broken,
yeah.
but you have to be very, very careful when you start using other fonts. And so yeah, two is kind of the standard max in terms of graphic design across the board. Typically, two fonts is kind of your max. You can definitely get away with it if you have a font that has a bunch of different weights. You can sometimes play with those a little bit, where it's the same font, but you have different bolds and italics and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's definitely a rule that I go by.
We've had some people mention in the comments that things are looking blurry. If that is the case for you all, maybe I'll try refresh the stream. That might work. Otherwise, I'm going to double check to see how quick my actual stream is going at. I think it should be fine. So if it's still a little bit low res for you, you can either manually up the stream quality or you can go just refresh the stream there. All right, back to your regularly scheduled program. And our next one here is a fantasy book. Don't worry, there's other sort of non-genre type stuff coming later. But this one's called The Wizard and the Welshman. It is I guess, historical fantasy, murder mystery.
Yeah. This one, I wanted to. There was a couple elements here that I wanted to kind of to hit on here because I liked the image itself. I thought the image itself was kind of neat. However, once I got past that and got to looking into it, there's a lot of this cover that ends up being it's not as impactful as it could be. And again, you're going to kind of hear the same song and dance is how your fonts are used, how your image is used, all of that comes into play here. The image itself, it's a weird kind of image, and I don't mind that, especially as someone who sees a lot of fantasy art, a lot of fantasy covers. I don't mind things that are kind of off the mark a little bit or just a little bit different, and you kind of have this crystallized snowy heart, and I think that's a really neat concept. So I mean, the one level you could push this to is make that image bigger, make your center up your typography, because you have that weird staggered look there, and I don't think you need that in this case. It doesn't really serve the cover really well. Um, this one does kind of get lost at its current point. It gets lost in the negative space of uh, of the image. I mean, of the cover. The black just kind of gobbles up so much, and you should have negative space. You should have places for your eyes to rest and for there to be, not nothing just jammed in there. But this one, I think, is balanced too far that way with negative space. So again, making the image bigger would be the one automatic way to kind of make this cover be more impactful. Your typography, the font, um, you've got the uppercase and lowercase thing happening, and I don't think you need that here. I think all caps might serve you well. Although when you do start getting into longer titles, sometimes it's not a bad idea to play with the uppercase and lowercase, because when we get to reading sentences or reading long titles, or long strings of text, all caps can be confusing or can be muddled to see. So you could easily say keep the real small, wizard real big, and the smaller, and then Welshman bigger, to kind of create a hierarchy in your title to make it legible and to keep the all caps thing happening versus having these ups and downs that are often created visually with uppercase and lowercase. Um, and then I think the black again, I would want to see it bigger just to see what it looked like. You might be served well by putting a texture on the edge of that black, or just a light texture around the edge to echo maybe that smoky condensation or whatever it is that's coming off that heart. To kind of bring that back into play around the edges of the cover, almost like a frame, just to kind of create some more variance to the black. Just because it's black doesn't mean it's the best use of the negative space. You could easily have a texture in there that would help just create some interest and some dynamicism to the cover really quickly and really easily.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a really nice concept. Speaking of, yeah, the caps, like it does look a bit weird. It says the first the is big and the second the is small. It's technically correct under title case, but it just looks a bit weird as a result, and maybe would be, as you say, better served in this case by all caps.
Yeah, that's one of the one of the tricks to, or the ways that, again, to look at the way a cover is presented is, like, the typography, the text is part of the image, and we process images a little bit differently than we process text. Like, our minds are used to looking at it a certain way. So when we see text, we're used to text being on a white background, or even here in this case a black background. But when we're geared up to look at cover imagery, and we have the uppercase and lowercase thing happening, that can play with how people read the story. Like I said, you get a weird visual. Here's a spike of white, it goes back down, and it's just, you get this weird variance of it, and it might not seem like it's that big a deal. And is somebody going to be like, oh, there's uppercase and lowercase on this cover, I'm not buying this book? Like, no one's going to have that approach to the story. But you want your cover to present well, again, with like 0.2 seconds of somebody looking at it. And you don't want to create anything that might detract or pull away from the cover. So you can keep that in mind as you design them.
All right, cool. Thank you, Anna, for sending that one in. Our next one is fiction slash street literature by the writer Hustle Rich. It's called Nola's Empire. What are you making of this one? Oh, we see the water
This one,
droplet texture coming back.
do what now? I didn't
The
catch that
water,
last
the
little
water
bit.
droplets from the mermaid pool have made a reappearance.
Yes, yes, the water droplet texture. I didn't even get to that point on the mermaid pool. But here, this one, it has some very odd things happening to it. And again, my note that I had here for the cover was refinement and too many elements. And I think somebody said that, refinement is another word for change. So yes, refinement, change. I mean, look at taking these things and leveling them up. Overall, there's just a lot happening here, and it's really dark and it's really hard to see. You see that image of the woman up in the top, and she's one art style, which is kind of like a soft computer generated look, and you've got the silhouette, and the doves are coming, or birds are coming out of the silhouette's hair, and you've got this weird evening faded sky. There's just a lot happening here, and it's not happening in favor for the cover, unfortunately. And that's just the way it goes sometimes with covers. For me, again, when you've got the uppercase and lowercase happening, let's go all caps. Drop shadows, use them sparingly. They only need to be used when absolutely necessary. And so again, that I would drop the way the font here that's been used. A nice clean white font. I guess a sans serif or a serif. I'd want to play with both of them. This typewriter type font that they've got playing in here, it doesn't really help to convey the spirit of the story, I don't think. I read the title as far as it goes, or read the synopsis that came with it, and it didn't really connect with it. That's one of the things you need to be careful when you start using fonts that are outside of just your typical sans serif or serif fonts, right? Some of your typical ones you see that we see all the time. When you start using they're not ornate fonts, but decorative fonts and that kind of stuff. When you start playing with that kind of stuff, you have to understand that there's going to be some nuances that come with them, and they're going to carry their own message with them. And the way the font is presented here, it just doesn't make the impact that it needs to make. So for me, I would like to see that you could look at that girl's face. I don't think you need her. If you wanted to keep it very, very simple, the silhouette with the hair with the birds come out of it might be a way to kind of play up and see if that was centered, how that would look. I'm pretty sure it's off center so that none of the birds get cut off. And so you have to be, again, aware of how things are balanced. If you wanted to leave it like it is and you didn't want to do a whole bunch of work, I would take Nola's Empire, move it to the left of the cover. That way the silhouette fills up the right side and comes across. And then you've got a nice puzzle piece approach to how they're fitting with each other. The background needs to be brighter so the silhouette can see a lot easier and a lot better. And then I would probably just lose that image of that woman's face altogether because she completely contrasts the rest of the way the cover's being presented. And so she doesn't need to be on there. And the water texture, again, you don't need that overlay. When I say texture, I mean I use texture sparingly. So I will take, let's just say a grunge texture and overlay it on a cover, and I'll dial it down to like 15%. So like where it's barely, barely visible because you just want a little bit of interplay. That water texture here ends up being more detracting than it is helping. So I would 86 it altogether as well.
Did you spot the author name?
Hustle down there in the corner. I did earlier today, but I'm still talking to 700 people, and I didn't think, yes, down in the corner. That needs to be real much way bigger, guys, way bigger.
Because I guess
You
there is like there's the two
definitely need
sides
it.
of it. If you're not a known author, I guess you don't want to make it like Stephen King size, two lines on the page, but also like you don't want to don't want to hide your letter on a bushel. Like as a first time author, like how big would you suggest the author title is? The author name.
I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Don't sell yourself short. Do you need to be Stephen King level? No, you don't need to be that big. But you need to make sure your author name has a presence on the cover, and think about how it's presented. Think about how, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're probably going to have two things happening on a cover. Mainly the branding for that series or that story, and then there's going to be a little bit of author branding that's happening as well. And so think about that in terms of um, how you're going to lay it out across multiple covers. And when I say branding, that's what it is. When you start branding, you're thinking about how this is going to look, this certain element, this certain approach, how it's going to look from this cover to this cover to this cover to this cover. And so, with author branding, it's essentially kind of simple. I mean, your font, your name may stay in the same font across covers. You could try that approach. Some authors dabble in different genres, so you may want to change that up a little bit, just depending. But don't sell yourself short. Your name needs to be on there. People need to remember who they're reading. And you're right, H. Rich is extremely small. And I saw that earlier this morning when I was looking through it. And I should have made a note here in my thing to put, but it needs to be much, much bigger. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for sending that one in, Hustle. Let's see what we got next. We have a thriller, All the Secrets We Hide by Martina Bernard.
Yeah, this one I liked a lot. I thought it had a lot of good elements that started with it. It's got some. The first thing I'll say is it's got some weird spacing. It seems like everything is like not quite center and kind of off kilter a little bit. Like the when she discovers the truth up at the corner, that first little blurb seems like it's kind of kicked to the side, and then you've got kind of this weird letting space between we hide and then a novel is real close to hide. Um, that's kind of creating some really weird visual hiccups for me. And if it and I'm used to seeing that kind of stuff, right? Or I spot that stuff pretty easy. But you can guarantee that readers can pick up on that as well. I can't see the chat, but I would probably imagine that somebody might have already said something about the way that spacing is and how it kind of seems weird. That's a really easy fix. Just make sure your stuff is centered like you want it and spaced really well and has some that there's no real weird tension points. Like there's a really good tension point between a novel and Hyde, and it needs more space, needs more room to breathe to match the rest of the story. Real quick, she's got Martina Bernard, real big, real simple. I mean, is that the best author branding? No. It's very simple font. It's very simple, but it's there. It's easy, and it's really easy to read. At a thumbnail, this cover will the title will read very easily. The background does kind of get a little dark, so I would be aware of that. That's gonna be a little bit of a thing going forward, especially people seeing it real small. So there might be some going there and contrast that out a little bit better. I do like the colors that are being used here, but just a slight adjustment to the exposure or to the brightness will kind of begin to make that background come alive a little bit more. The moon is kind of washed in blue. Could easily be a bright moon to again have a nice bright spot in the cover to help create just some color variance across the board. Um, the one thing here that I put in my notes was I thought it was a well thought out cover, but very much like our very first cover we had with Paradise, this one could kind of get lost in the mix. It's a very well done cover, but it's a very overdone cover approach. The moment I saw this, I thought about the book Where the Crawdads Sing. I've seen some Dean Koontz books like this. I've seen a bunch of thriller books that play this same approach of a nice, bright, centered sans serif, and then just some type of uh, ominous type background. So you need to be aware of that. It's okay to uh, lean into what readers of the genre expect to see, and you should do that. But also, you want to make sure that you don't lean in so much that you get lost in the mix of all the other covers that you're competing against. So again, it's about trying to find a way to separate yourself while still maintaining what readers of the genre kind of expect to see and want to see from a cover. So it's a very fine line to play with. But I would think about that going forward in terms of how you approach it. But overall, I thought it was a pretty well put together cover.
Cool. Well, thank you, Martina, for sending that one in. I'm noticing the "we" in the title is sort of integrated a bit into the image. The bottom of it, I think, is just beyond the tree line on the horizon, which I guess makes it sort of sit in there a little better than the example we had before. Cool.
Yeah, it's a very nice interplay. Yeah,
All right, let's see what we got next. Here is a children's one, Marlin and the Wide World by Dan Bales.
right on.
Lovely illustration.
Uh, I do too. I do too. I like it a lot. One thing that would kind of knock here is the font. I think gets a little lost in the imagery. I love the artwork, and I went online and looked up this guy's work. There's a couple other in the series, and they're really branded well. They do use that handwritten font, and I think it comes off just a smidge on the weak side to be read. I think it seems a bit just that it doesn't quite have the impact I like for it to have. And it may be just as simple as playing with the contrast between the black and that wood behind there. You could put a layer in to make that black text read a little bit stronger, just by lightening the background right there behind the title a little bit. but I'm being real nitpicky there. But I think this cover is done really well, and it fits kind of what you expect to see in the genre with the children's books. And it's got a nice playful tone. I do like the colors. You could maybe saturate them a little bit better, but I mean, it does come across like a cover I would expect to see in the genre, and it fits really well. Fits really well. So the one thing I said, like I said, the biggest hook for me was make that title a little bit bolder or stand out just a little bit more.
Cool. All right. Just looking at the O's there and the I. I wonder if this is the Disney font.
I don't believe so. You know that O, that curly Q at the top. That's done across a whole bunch of fonts. It's definitely not. It's definitely not Disney. But you know, it's very handwritten, and I like that feeling that it comes with it. So yeah, but no, definitely not Disney.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And checking out like the two Ds, I guess it probably is handwritten there. Cool. Nice one. All right. Let's see what we have next. We have historical romance. Great title. Sheep are simply less trouble than Scotsmen.
I I love the title here. I like this title. And again, if you're talking about developing a cover, developing a brand, developing a story, making sure your title is memorable and unique and it kind of sets it apart. This title does that. Unfortunately, the rest of the cover does not do that. No more favors are done after the title is seen. I know it's a romance, historical romance. If you get into the historical romance genre on Amazon, there are I mean, you know, I don't know how romance it gets in this story. I don't know if it's steamy or if it's, you know, whatever. But I mean, you got Scotsman right there. I don't know if you want a bare chested guy on there, and I'm not saying you put him on there, but I feel like I need to see a Scotsman of some variety on this cover. And the title leads it to be kind of maybe a lighthearted approach to the romance. I'm not sure in terms of what it goes. When you read the synopsis kind of reads like a really, really serious romance. And so again, making sure that those things line up with your title, lining up with your synopsis and the feel that someone's going to get from the title versus when they read the synopsis, making sure those things are congruent with each other is going to help build that branding for your story. And when your title starts off with sheep, I'm not going to go down a serious path. It's just not going to happen. So I would think about that. But I like this title. You know, and if you're going to keep that, and I'm not saying change the title. I like that title. I think you can take that title and then pull imagery and pull your approach to your cover from the title itself. I mean, in my designer mind, all I need for a brief is sheep are simply less trouble than a Scotsman, and I've got more than enough to go on to create a historical romance cover. The image here just comes across lackluster. It's just, you know, it's just a nice serene background. So I would overhaul that completely. And you've got Lisa Brookhouse. I think again we're talking about author branding right here. You've got an author branding going on. Unfortunately, I think it competes a bit with its current position and its current look. So I would be careful of that and how that's approached. You could easily make, if you left it all alone, you didn't want to change anything, make the title about 40% bigger, make it fill up that on that water background so that it kind of has its own presence in its own place. And it kind of overplays the author a little bit so that they're not quite the same size and they're not competing in the same space. So but yeah, I would completely redo this background because I think you've got a great title that you can play into really, really well.
Cool. Well, thank you for sending that one in, Lisa. Let's see what we've got coming down the pipe. We have one which I believe is a photography book and a non-fiction one. American Bedroom by Barbara Peacock. This is our first landscape formatted title.
Yeah, I know we're running up on time here, so I'm gonna go kind of quick so I can get through as many as I can. This one, I love the image. Leave it alone. The image here, this is fantastic. The one note I had was the typography. Again, you know, I think here the image itself does a ton of work for you, and so you don't have to put a lot of effort into the typography, but you might want to think about that in terms of how it's approached here with with the way it's approached here because it's just white laid in the corner. And again, you're not wanting to detract from the image. I totally get it, and I'm on board with that. But I think the font could maybe be played with a bit here to be a little bit more unique. It could be very simple. Going back to the Toys R Us suggestion before, if you're going to have these really quirky type images, I even looked up the book itself online, and it had a ton of really interesting imagery. And if you're going to have that, let your font convey that same spirit. It could be a twist of a letter. It could be the way you approach things. Those little details can really start to play and really start to level up your cover. And so pay attention to that.
Cool. I will try to get a few more in. We've got another science fiction, but a very different style one, Heteria.
Exactly. This one is I said earlier that the Paradise Calls was I had said was like a brown cow in a field. This one I had wrote down the word purple cow, but not necessarily in the best way. I love minimal covers. I love a minimalist design. I really do attract to those. I don't do those personally, but I do like them when I see them. And I think here, that's clearly what they went for. They went for a very limited color palette, a very minimal palette, and it kind of has a retro feel, which I think really is really cool. So in the approach here, they are kind of taking I guess you might say, purple cow approach to the genre. You're not going to see a lot of covers that are fitting this mold. The ones that you would see fitting this mold are going to be the publishers that are doing like, Robert Heinlein's 50th anniversary of Starship Troopers or whatever, or if they're going to do the 50th anniversary of Dune or something like that. They're going to have this minimal, different approach that you haven't seen before. So that's going to be where you see those play out. So the one risk, the risk that you take on if you're really going to try and separate your style from what the genre is expected, what people in the genre kind of expect to see, is it might get overlooked. It might not have the impact that you want to have. I'm talking about colored animals here, but you're talking about black swans and white swans and that kind of stuff. If you're wanting to be that black swan cover, that purple cow cover, there's going to be, if you push that idea, you're going to run the risk of pushing it too far. And here, I'm not quite sure if it's gone too far or not. I do like it, but I don't know. I don't know if it's going to have quite the impact the author wants in terms of sales and people clicking through it when they're compared to the other covers that are going to be in the genre, because it's going to be up against the Cheneys and the Anderleys and all kind of other sci-fi artists or covers authors that are out there. So it might get lost and it might get overlooked because it doesn't quite fit what, when I'm a reader, a sci-fi reader, and I'm looking to grab a book, it might be overlooked because it's not quite what I'm looking for in terms of the style. So you have to be very careful there in terms of towing that line between fitting what might be expected to be seen, using the things that people are going to look for in that genre, and then pushing it too far to where people are going to go, that doesn't fit what I'm looking for, and they just scroll on by.
All right, we've already done actually, yeah, let's do this one. This is a very familiar one as well. Not Your Lucky Day by Lee Wood.
One of the things that I designed by is the phrase simplify and amplify. Simplify a cover down to its basic elements, which are going to be like one or two elements, and then amplify those elements. Looking at this cover, to simplify this down, you got the girl in the red and you got the city. You don't need the ghosting figure in the background. You don't need that at all. And you could even simplify the color palette down to where it's a bit simpler. You could turn her, if you're going to kind of follow the trends for thriller, she would need to be more silhouette. You could put a brighter spot behind her to make her stand out a little bit more. But this one has the elements there, but it's a bit too much, and it's a bit too much color for the genre and what people are kind of expecting to see. And so just a few tweaks here could really really make this amplified up. Again, be aware that you're kind of falling into what genre trends are, and it may run the risk of being too much like all the other covers, but you can play off of that and make a strong cover from going off of what people expect to see in the cover. So the elements are there. It just needs to be refined. This one here, I'll go real fast. This one here, I like this image. It's very interesting. It's very eye-catching. This one ends up being more neutral tones, and I'm going to go just on the big things that stick out to me. It's too neutral. There's too many. There's just almost one color palette, and that's okay. That's one color palette, but you need to push and pull those contrasting colors. If you're going to keep that color palette the same, if you're going to keep that image and not adjust the colors, I might play with the color of the font. White's going to always read the best, so I mean, it might be the go-to, but you could play with some dark browns or some dark golds or some bright golds, light golds. I'm not really sure what you could mess around with here, but you could easily play with that to kind of create some variance. But you definitely need some more contrast, and I need some more color more color contrast in there to create some sort of variance in the cover. The hair itself is even almost the same tone as the cloth, so you have to be very careful there. All right, Crossroads. Uh, Again, you're going with romance. The vector art is real popular in romance and some of the romances that you see now. And I think they went for that effect here, but it ends up being more watercolor and ends up being more. It comes off more like a child, not a childish. It comes up more just hand painted watercolor, and you need to be aware that it just doesn't have the impact. The image doesn't have the impact that you want. Crossroads of the Heart, you've got some weird space in there. I know it's kind of hand drawn. It may actually be a hand drawn. It may be a hand drawn cover that's been scanned in. Um, that's cool if it is, but again, the typography there needs to be refined. It needs to be addressed, made to be bigger. Crossroads could be a little bigger. Of the could be smaller. Heart could be real big in a nice hand drawn font that kind of reads well. And when I say hand drawn font, I mean a font that's actually a font you download, but it looks hand drawn. So that you can keep consistency with imagery and I mean with typography. And if you make more in the series, you can again continue your consistency with that font. So and again, the typography for the author name needs to be bigger, it needs to be bolder. Could be a nice serif, and you'd be good to go.
All right, let's just pick one more. We've had a romance before. Hey, here we go. Travel memoir, Sandstone Rhythm.
Yeah, this one I chose because I think it's a very good example of knowing your genre and knowing what people in that genre want to. Again, I'm gonna say it's a whole bunch. There's about 4 elements here, guys. That if you can interweave them into every cover, you're gonna make a strong cover. Know what the readers of the genre expect to see, and play off of that. Use that to your strength. Use that to your advantage. Here, this one comes off dated. It kind of reminded me of a Times magazine, and I looked up travel books on Amazon because I don't know that genre very well. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't talking out of the side of my head. And there was one cover that almost looked like it was very similar. And I didn't know if they saw that one and they tried to do something similar in the same vein. But it did come off kind of like a Time Life magazine type cover to me, almost like something I would see in a National Geographic type approach. And I think it's a memoir. It's a travel memoir. And I think if you're going to have a travel memoir, you need to make sure your imagery is a bit more ethereal, a bit more emotion evoking. And this one kind of reads more textbook. And so I would take the spirit of this approach and refine, change the image up, make it be something that you could in that same. I think this is where is this at? National Parks North America. Find a really nice emotion evoking image from a national park that you can use, and then you could really softly overlay your title to really convey, that this is a travel memoir and one that kind of when I read it, I want to go on the journey with the author. And here it ends up the way the cover is presented. It presents more textbook and more flat, and it actually puts a gap between me wanting to read it versus asking me to come read it and find out more about it.
Yeah, I think it's also got like too many text elements, like the grand circle. Then there's the logo you have for the publishing company, and then a tribute to those who have discovered, preserved, and maybe the Wild West. Like that stuff could probably go on
Oh,
the
I
back
can
cover.
I can't even see that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so much business going on there.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, we have now reached the end of the hour. I know a lot of you folks have been sticking on, hoping to see your cover featured. However, we did get like 450, and we would be here all day. However, if you're looking for help, maybe refining, elevating your covers, head on to Reedsy and search through our many experienced cover designers, including Jake. Here, the link to his profile is in the video description. You've sort of seen the kind of stuff he specializes in, but if you think your book is a good match for Jake, hit him up through Reedsy and see if you guys can work together. Jake, I really want to thank you for taking time out of your day to do all of these. I think we've learned a lot today, and it's been very useful. To you folks at home, thank you for sticking around, and we'll have another one of these at some point, no doubt. If you've enjoyed it, just drop me an email, martin@reedsy.com, and let me know. Yeah, Jake, any sort of last thoughts, last pitches to the folks at home? What sort of stuff are you looking to work on?
I mean, my bread and butter is sci-fi and fantasy and urban fantasy. But I mean, I've done all kinds of genres, from nonfiction to romance to all kind of stuff. So yeah, if you think I might be a fit, don't hesitate to reach out to me as far as it goes. But I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys putting up your covers for critique. I hope nothing I said came across as crass or hurtful. I just wanted to my whole goal is, if I can make you make a better cover, it gets you better sales, and it makes you more successful. And therefore, if I do the cover and the same thing happens, it makes me successful because it makes you successful. So I mean, a rising tide raises all boats. So that's the approach here today.
Great. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, everyone watching. Remember, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye.